My name is Ryan Gaither, and for those of you who don't know, I chose to devote my year to the topic of human genetic engineering. The reason why I chose this topic is because I'm type 1 diabetic, and I see this as the most viable option to prevent my grandchildren and my children from having the disease that I suffer from. I also was aware of the power of DNA and genetics to influence both personality and physical attributes, and so something that would be able to modify that would have repercussions on society that I wanted to be aware of. So this topic has both the ability to do good and the ability to do bad as well, which prevents it from being a flat subject and has multiple aspects that need to be studied. I figured I'd bore you guys with some science before I got into my presentation. What enables human genetic engineering at this current stage of research is the bacterial immune system defense protein, known as CRISPR or Cas9. This protein has the ability to delete, copy, and paste DNA sequences, and when adapted to the laboratory environment, scientists have been able to replicate experiments where they copy, paste, and delete DNA sequences. You can see here that the Cas9 protein enters itself into the replication process and then just pastes whatever DNA sequence that you want into the existing DNA sequence of the species. The preliminary experiments of this protein have been very promising. In one example of the plethora of preliminary trials in mice, a research team has discovered the potential for multiplexed genome editing, where they demonstrated that CRISPR/Cas9 mediated gene editing allows for the simultaneous description of 5 genes at once in the mouse embryonic stem cells with high efficiency. So this allows for the topic of human genetic engineering to no longer be an issue of whether science will allow it, but if society will. Human genetic engineering has the ability to change multiple things in society. After further research on what genes are responsible for what, there is very little that human genetic engineering won't be able to change. It obviously has control over our physical appearance. It also has control over our physical operations on the inside of our body. It has influence on personality attributes such as temperament, intelligence, mood control, and rate of development. As research continues, the question will be what can't be changed. As a consequence of the ability of human genetic engineering to change virtually anything, this topic has multiple different aspects that require separate ethical judgment on each and every individual one. The first topic that I decided to tackle was the medical aspect. Dr. Das J. Ashi stated that human genetic engineering will be able to eradicate the problem genes that cause diseases in the family history. Research has been conducted that on mice where they identify the genes that cause the issues, and so once they identify them, this will allow them to delete that gene from the genome and prevent the issue. This also is used to prevent conditions, and it is stated that 7 out of 10 Americans rely on prescription medication every day, and if this is allowed to treat conditions as well, it will decrease the reliance on prescription medication. However, there are some issues to this as well. Scientists are awfully eager to bring this topic forward, but it is an intensely complicated subject with 50 to 300 billion genes in each individual. So scientists have been facing extensive issues in recording the results and replicating them. So Sun-Hao Lee from the Department of Applied Mathematics at Sejong University, who has a doctorate in mathematics and statistics, claims that the usage of large numbers of genes with small data samples may lead to overfitting in classification and generate promising but non-reproducible results. Without the ability to reproduce the studies that are conducted, but the attempt to reproduce them, it would often lead to mistakes in the experiments that they're conducting, which is not a beneficial thing when choosing to proceed with this research. The next aspect is the modification of mental and physical aspects. Human genetic engineering has the ability for physical improvements like improving size, increasing muscle mass, reducing sleep dependence, increasing endurance and deaccelerating aging. Similarly, it has the ability for mental improvements like improving memory and cognitive ability, promoting multidimensional thinking, increasing imagination, improving social ability, shyness, and instill confidence. This improvements will accelerate and continue the human evolution. However, there is once again a downside. This is sensitive. The medical side of human genetic engineering will be largely funded by insurance because insurance companies realize that it is cheaper to do one operation to prevent a lifelong disease than to treat a lifelong operation. However, this will not be funded by insurance, and it will allow for the top 1% who has $34 million of the United States, of the world's money. The top 1% has $34 million of the world's money. And so they will be the ones who are able to access this, and they will gain advantages over the rest of the population more than they already have. They already have the advantages of privatized education and opportunities that other people do not face, but now they will be able to make their children to be faster, stronger, and smarter than us. The final aspect that I chose to analyze was the cosmetic aspect. This is the aspect that coined the term designer baby, which has a largely negative connotation because it means that people are choosing the attributes for their baby. This aspect promotes the Nazi practice of eugenics, where some attributes were seen as preferable to others, which is a very negative social view that we have tried to eliminate for a very long time. But there is another side of this. Students with cleft lips, even after plastic surgery to fix their lip, have faced a 69% rate of bullying, which has led to severe depression and a negative outlook on life. Whereas plastic surgery fails to fix this issue, human genetic engineering could be applied to fix this issue. There's an overarching argument against human genetic engineering where people say that we are playing God. Genesis 1:27 of the Bible reads that God created man in his own image, and that they believe that by using human genetic engineering, we are altering this image. However, the First Amendment dictates that people have the freedom of religion, and they do not choose to follow this rule. It will be a personal choice of the individual who is choosing to put this on their baby, whether or not they believe that we were created in God's image and whether or not we are altering that. There is a plethora of pre-existing attitudinal research, including studies on Germans, Japanese women, genetic researchers, elderly, and much more. As there's just an absolute ocean of this research, and as I was digging through it, I noticed a lack of understanding of the millennial demographic, especially the students who are of high school age. The closest representation was a study on existing parents by Dr. Sarah Myers. These parents were in favor of all aspects of human genetic engineering. However, this study does not represent future parents, which would be our generation. Which brought me to my research question. What are the attitudes of high school students towards the multiple aspects of human genetic engineering? My methodology, I chose to conduct my experiments on biology classes. I had a total of 75 participants with 37 ninth grade males, 21 ninth grade females, and 17 others. The other category applies to 10th, 11th, 12th graders and super seniors, or people who chose not to identify their gender. The design of my experiment had 3 parts. I had 7 Likert questions, which are used to develop a desire to change of the students. So whether they were willing to change physical attributes, mental attributes, and stuff like that, that would be able to be changed through human genetic engineering. It also developed whether they're comfortable with the idea that parents have the right to modify their children, and if they're comfortable with achieving these changes in the medical environment. The yes-no questions were much more direct quantitative questions. They were the core of the survey. They were designed to attack each aspect of human genetic engineering and get a simple answer whether they were supportive of it or not. And finally, the free response questions were for qualitative results to develop a deeper understanding as to why the students had these attitudes. The results of my Likert scale questions were that all demographics expressed a desire to change in questions 1 through 5. This means that the students are willing, they have a desire to change the physical and mental attributes of themselves. However, as we went into further questions, they may not be comfortable with doing this in a medical environment. Ninth grade males were comfortable with changing their future child and were uncomfortable with changing their future child and the medical environment, meaning that they would not be comfortable with having human genetic engineering done on their child, and they would not be comfortable with the idea of changing attributes in a medical environment. Ninth grade females shared the belief about changing their future child, but they were comfortable with medical environment, suggesting that they may be comfortable with things like plastic surgery and other attributes like that. And the other category were uncomfortable with all aspects of human genetic, all aspects of the Likert-Scale questions. In the yes/no questions, ninth grade males, the only response that received a positive outlook by the majority of respondents was question 12, which was whether or not parents had the right to genetically modify their children. Although on the Likert-Scale questions, they answered that they were not comfortable with this right, this shows that they are willing to have other people have this right. The ninth grade females shared the same opinion on question 12, but they also shared the same opinion, or they also had a positive outlook on question 10, which means that they are in support of having these things done in the medical environment. And the other questions, the other category had a negative outlook on all questions. The results that I received from the free response section were largely congruent to my research and my literature review, whereas the students brought up the possibility of mistakes and the fact that it was too expensive, and that kids may not like how their parents made them look, and it has the ability to make people better, and the fact that it is a free country. These are all mere things that I saw in my literature review. However, a newfound response that I did not see in my literature review was "accept who you are." And this was peculiar because it mirrors an anti-bullying slogan. And so I'm curious as to whether this was a result of the anti-bullying campaign that we've recently seen. And so I want to conduct further research to see if there's a correlation between the anti-bullying campaign and attitudes on things such as human genetic engineering. My survey had a number of limitations. I received a large amount of non-response bias, meaning that students did not respond to questions. And while this was easy to eliminate from my data by simply not putting in a value for the response, it demonstrates a lack of seriousness towards my survey, which was found in a response bias. Response bias is where you don't necessarily believe what the respondents are saying. This was a result of the lack of seriousness, whereas there were some cases where I was suspicious of students just circling the first option or by writing joke answers in the free response column. And I'm also a victim of convenience sampling, where I went into my own high school with my own teachers and received a very limited sample that, as you try and expand the results further and further past Spokane, Washington, and Shadle Park High School, they become less relevant, especially because of the predominantly white nature of Spokane public schools. In conclusion, I recommend further research to both affirm the results that I've received that high school students have a very negative outlook on human genetic engineering, but also to test whether there is a correlation between the anti-bullying campaign and attitudes on human genetic engineering and other aspects of the science field.
So, Ryan, how did you evaluate the sources you collected to make sure they were credible, valid, and reliable? And which sources did you discard and why?
The majority of my sources were from academic databases, and I made sure to research the people who produced them, make sure they had a doctorate in their field and experience in other surveys that were conducted. The only sources that I used that weren't from this, I made sure to get directly from the sites that produced them. For example, in my literature review, I had a statistic on Viagra data, and I made sure to go directly to the Viagra website.
Well, Ryan, what additional questions emerged during your research?
Whether there is a correlation between the anti-bullying campaign and the responses that I received on my survey.
Well, speaking of that answer, if you had 3 more months to work on this research project, what additional research strategies would you put into practice?
I would diversify my sample population to go outside my own school, outside my own city, and outside 9th grade males and females in order to broadcast my results further onto more population.
Great job.